to say, it's nice to be on stage without very painful toes, so. All right, I'd like you to picture this. A dark theater, 3,000 people, a live orchestra, and a conductor at his stand. You are at the Royal Opera House in London, and you're watching the Royal Ballet perform Romeo and Juliet. On the other side of the curtain, backstage, is a rush. Stage managers call lighting cues, stagehands move big pieces of scenery, dressers help with quick changes, and hair and makeup team is all hands on deck. The curtain rises, and the opening scene begins. Stage right, in the second wing, there's me, waiting. And every stage manager and dancer who passes me nods and winks and whispers good luck, because tonight I'm making my debut as Juliet, a role that every ballerina dreams of performing, so it's one of the biggest nights of my career. Like a ritual, I head to the downstage wing to cover the bottoms of my shoes in a powder so I don't slip on stage, and as I'm walking, I can see flashes of faces in the auditorium transfixed. They've all bought tickets to see my show, to watch me as Juliet, so it's up to me to deliver. I crunch my soles into the yellow crystals of rosin, dust the edges of my shoes, and then I walk back to my place in the wings to wait for my first entrance. The music pauses, and the scene changes. Breathe in, breathe out. I can hear the violins begin, which is my cue, and I bound onto the stage with all the excitement, anticipation, and nerves that come with doing anything for the first time. All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Beatrice, and I've had a pretty non-traditional path. I started dancing ballet at the age of 5. I became a professional at 14, and I moved to London at 17 to join the Royal Ballet, which is the top ballet company in the world, as the youngest member, and I had an 11-year career there. After rising through the ranks and performing my dream roles, I decided to change the course of my life. So I retired, and I came to Stanford as a 28-year-old freshman, the oldest person in my class by about 10 years, but I came to discover myself beyond the stage. I know firsthand what it means to master a craft and what it takes to pivot and change your story. And today, I'm going to show you how my 20-plus years rehearsing and performing prepared me for a major life pivot, and how you can apply a ballerina's mindset to your own stages of life. Now, in every phase of our lives, we require something different from ourselves, from our work, from the people around us, and yet we're inherently wired to hate change. A lot of us, and I'm sure some people in this auditorium, can imagine ourselves doing or being something different, but we bury those intuitions because of external forces and internal fears, and suddenly a massive distance builds between our want to pivot and our ability to take action. Shortening that gap between desiring and doing means potentially walking away from a known path, something you're good at, something you love, something you've dedicated your life to. That transition involves a complete releasing and reshaping of identity, which can be scary. In ballet, it's very rare that a performance goes as perfectly as you want it to because it's just so hard. If you take a basic position, and I'm coming out of retirement to show you this position, so let's all enjoy this together. If we take this basic position, this requires so much from my body. I have to keep my shoulders back. I have to turn my right leg out, my left leg out, keep my left arch supported, make sure I activate my glutes and my lats, especially my left lat. The list goes on and on and on, and that's just one static pose. Now picture that same position balancing right at the tip of a point shoe, where the surface area of the shoe is about this big, and the dancer is spinning multiple times trying to spot a non-existent target in a very dark auditorium. And then you add 3,000 people, bright stage lights, costumes, having to dance perfectly in sync with the music, trying to embody a role at the same time, and I think you can get just how difficult it is to execute even one step perfectly. But my performances as Juliet went the way I wanted them to. From the studio to the stage, I dissolved into the role. I reached this state of flow where my muscles fired just the way I had practiced. And this sense of fulfillment triggered a sort of inner shift in me that signaled maybe I might be ready to leave this and move on. I had lived one dream, so what if I released it to chase another? The ballet world was pretty surprised when I announced my retirement and my complete 180 out of dance. I was still young, still at my peak, still completely in love with my job, but I had always loved academics, and deep down I knew that at some point I was going to want to do something different. I just wasn't sure when that would be. So living my dream as Juliet became my big pivot point. A few months after my performances, I decided to apply and then was accepted to Stanford. And very soon after that, I faced a new reality that looked nothing like my old one. As a dancer, I spent 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in pointe shoes. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go to daily ballet class, which is the dancer's equivalent of brushing your teeth. And then we'd rehearse up to 4 different productions throughout the day. That was interspersed with weight training and body conditioning and sports treatments. And then we'd get ready for a 7:30 p.m. curtain up. After a 3-hour grueling performance, the night ended in standing ovations, in autographs, ice buckets, recovery practices, and bedtime, usually past midnight, only to start that whole circuit again the very next morning. So, what this career has taught me is that life and pivots happen in cycles of 3 acts. You have the backstage, the onstage, and after the show. Let's get into it. All right, I'm going to start with backstage, where the preparation is all about the small steps. Ballet is about transitions, not just the big leaps and the dazzling pirouettes, but those small moments in between. And a high-quality performance is shaped by the amount of care and discipline a dancer puts into the smallest transition steps. Today, you embody the 12 hours of backstage detail you put in yesterday. The same goes for tomorrow and every day after that. If we take another basic ballet position, which I won't show you because I have a cramp from what I just did earlier, so. This position is called an arabesque. The dancer steps onto her pointe shoe, her back leg is elevated, her arms are outstretched, her upper body is open, and she balances right at the tip of that shoe. It's beautiful and it's impressive. But what happens right before that step? And what happens right after it? How does a dancer even prepare to make that shape? The beauty and the strength of that position actually comes from the very detailed way a dancer turns out and unfurls her leg, the way she shapes her foot, the way she steps onto her leg with very hidden strength. That step is actually built from the small transition right before it and the small transition out of it. So a bad transition is enough to ruin the main event altogether. I'm just remembering how difficult that was. Life happens and amplifies in the in-betweens. And the way you handle those smaller moments prepares you for who you'll become in the larger life changes. A bad transition is enough to ruin the main event altogether. So, the ceremony, rigor, and process you practice every day becomes your performance and becomes your pivot. So build your self-trust through the smallest backstage habits. Now let's step on stage, where you have to learn to fear regret and not failure. Fearing regret will snap you into another realm, and fearing failure will pull you back entirely. As a dancer, going on stage every night, you face the very real possibility of lifetime failure in front of thousands of people. You could fall or slip, you could execute poorly, forget the choreography, maybe worst of all, just deliver a performance that's below the quality you know you're capable of. I've done those things. Every dancer has. But the approach to the performance is really what mattered more than anything. My goal, time and time again, whether I succeeded or failed, was to put myself in the ring. Regardless of the outcome or the circumstance, I wanted to commit myself to the moment fully, without reservation. which unfortunately is a very difficult task. Because sure, I was scared to mess up, but I was more terrified of the idea of coming off the stage wishing I had pushed a little harder, committed more, or just taken that extra risk. In ballet, the physical, emotional, and artistic breakthroughs happen at the very edges of your comfort zone when you stretch your tolerance for risk, and pivoting in life is no different. As you step out onto your new stage, it might feel like the scariest place to be, but that's also the arena where all the glory happens. A new identity emerges when you stretch your tolerance for risk and when you push yourself into the spaces where you think you might fall. So choose that. Commit to that. Otherwise, you risk never meeting a version of yourself that you always hoped to create. Now it's after the show, where you have to get used to starting over. After the show means back to the drawing board. You wake up, you go into ballet class the next morning to essentially start from scratch. You have to re-warm up your body to prepare for a new role, where you're dancing for a new audience who might be seeing ballet for the very first time. And they don't get to see the version of you from yesterday's performance. Whether you were good or bad, you have to prove yourself all over again. But when your body is so used to starting over the second that curtain comes down, it knows what to do because it has years worth of these post-performance reinventions under its belt. It's accustomed to the feeling of beginning again. When I first came to Stanford as an elderly undergrad, I was in a computer science class on my very first day. This is actually a photo from my very first day of classes. And I had never seen a line of code in my life. So I was staring at my screen, sweating. And as I looked up, all of the 18-year-olds around me had finished the problem so quickly they started ordering sneakers and watching YouTube before I had even finished reading the question. So you can imagine my shock and my horror and my devastation. Because I genuinely felt like I was starting from zero. But very quickly, I realized that underneath it all, I actually wasn't. I had built 20 years worth of muscle memory in a very different arena. So the discipline and the focus that I brought to my career as a dancer was the same discipline and focus that I brought to my life as a student. I was using the same operating system, just expressing it in a new way. Major pivots in life can feel like you're starting from scratch, but they're actually just a continuation and a celebration of everything that you've built, of the work that's shaped you and that will allow you to thrive in new spaces. And your life experiences become your tools. Pivoting actually allows the less visible residues of your work to rise to the surface, traits like grit and commitment and repetition. And while you might not bring your titles to your new arena, you will absolutely bring all of the work that refined you over the years. A few years ago, I delivered my farewell performance on the Royal Opera House stage, and I left the very defined path of a professional ballerina and all the success that comes with that for a completely unwritten act that felt foreign and scary, but it held a version of me that I needed to meet. Since then, I've been a devoted audience member in all of my classes. I have taken every course from computer science to art history. I have held and studied the human brain. I've performed cadaver dissections on human arms and legs, which might sound a little gory to you, but it was so thrilling to me because I got to touch and see and feel up close all of the bones and tendons and ligaments I had worked so closely with throughout my career. I will be graduating in a few months with a STEM degree, I might add, despite my very shaky start, but I am at yet another pivot point. I'm beginning again and starting a new act in my 30s. So I want you to consider those moments where you're just one step away from a big pivot or a big opportunity. Maybe you're leaving your job to build a company. Maybe you're starting a new career altogether. Maybe you're transitioning from student to graduate. You can feel your heart going 180 beats per minute. You feel that rush to your head, a little buzz in your chest and in your stomach. Maybe the feeling of fear and self-doubt creep in. But there's also that thrilling feeling of potential. Just one step exists between your backstage and your onstage. between your preparation and your show, and you will be a different person after. So, if you're on the cusp of any pivot, approach it in the 3 acts. Trust that you've put in all the backstage hours. Learn to fear the regret more than you fear the failure. And remember, it's just not that scary to start over. Thank you.